All right, part two. After talking with Karen and Chanel, I decided to do my own research. I did some research online at babytosee.com as well as parents.com, and then I also got some information out of our study book, The Human Body and Health and Disease. So, pregnancy is breaking down into 3 trimesters, which we can see here. The first trimester would be um, week 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 13. And then the second trimester would start with week 14 through 17, week 18 through 21, week 22 to 26. And then the third would be, the 7th through the 9th month. Um, a full-term pregnancy is considered to be 40 weeks or 9 months. Any baby that is born before the 37th week is considered premature. Pregnancy is counted from the first day of your last period, which is in most cases, but we've seen with Karen that wasn't the case with her. And at conception, you are considered to be 2 weeks pregnant. So even though we all already know, the question is what is needed in order to have a baby. But in order for a baby to be born, a male and female must have sexual relations by which reproduction occurs. They both contribute half of the nuclear chromosomes needed to form the first cell of an organism, which will eventually become a baby. The process begins, as we can see here, when a woman's ovary matures into an egg and within a follicle. And the follicle then releases the egg, and the egg is released into the fallopian tube and awaits the arrival of sperm. Semen enters the vagina, and interestingly, it is about a teaspoon worth of semen that enters the vagina. And even though this may seem to be a very small amount, there are about 300 million sperms in only that teaspoon. And to my surprise, only 200 of the sperms make it to the egg. When one sperm attaches to the egg is when the fertilization begins. The resulting cell is called a zygote, which contains all the genetic DNA that is needed for it to become a child. The baby then begins to form from this single fertilized egg, and the cell starts to divide itself into 2 cells, and then 3 cells, 4 cells, and so on. There are 46 chromosomes altogether, which are 23 from the woman and 23 from the man, and these help to determine all of the baby's physical characteristics. The fertilized egg continues rapidly divide as it floats down the fallopian toward the uterus. Then the implantation process begins. The developing embryo is in the uterus and looks for a comfy place, and then the zygote buries beneath the surface of the uterus. And it continues to multiply quickly. At about week 4 is when the mother may suspect that she is pregnant, and then the embryo splits into 2 parts. One half will be the placenta, and a special tissue, which is a special tissue that delivers must-have nutrients as well as oxygen to the baby throughout the entire pregnancy. The embryo continues to grow, and a sheet of cells has begun to create the neural tube where your baby's brain, spinal cord, and back form. And at week 5, which is a very vital week, that is when the tiny, tiny heart begins to beat. The baby's features begin to form, and so you'll see, on the side of their head, they're not a baby, you wouldn't say per se yet, because the ears are because the on the side of the head are the 2 folds of tissue, so they're not even considered ears yet, but they are continuing to grow slowly but surely. And so at this time, all the baby's main external features form, even though they are not yet fully developed. And as the weeks continue, the baby is growing faster and faster. To the embryo itself is about 1/4 inch long. And the major organs like the kidneys and liver, they begin to develop. And the brain develops into 5 areas, and some cranial nerves are visible. And the arm and legs buds are visible, and this is when the sensations of pregnancy start, like nausea, fatigue, sore breast, and frequent urination. The baby continues to grow, and the heart is now beating with a regular rhythm, but it cannot be detected by a stethoscope. By week 7, the baby begins to the brain grows more complex, and the nerve cells are growing at an amazing rate, and the baby can now move in small motions. Even though the mom can't feel them, the baby is able to move around. So, the reproductive organs begin growing as well as the pancreas and the gallbladder, and the baby has now doubled in size. So, the baby is getting bigger and bigger each month that goes by, and the fingers grow longer. And after week 10, the baby is no longer an embryo, but it's considered to be a fetus. The toes and fingers separate because at one time they're just all together. We know that they're, as we can see here, they're little nubs, but not until this stage they become a hand, and then the fingers begin to grow longer. And then at this point they can now produce urine. The baby's brain continues to develop at about 250,000 neurons every minute. And this is sometimes where development dangers can come into play. So, babies that are born at risk, or maybe with mental illnesses, this would be that time when that development would be interrupted. The fetus then begins to inhale and exhale small amounts of amniotic fluid, and the baby's muscles start to bulk up, and the baby begins stretching and kicking, and that's when, parents probably aren't too happy at that stage. The face begins to look more human-like, because as we can see in this picture, it doesn't look like a human. It kind of looks like a little baby alien, but, at this point, the face, because we can even see some people go in and get ultrasounds, and a long time ago with ultrasounds, you would just see a bunch of lines, but with the technology that we have now, you can even see, the smallest features of the baby, and even maybe sometimes see who they'll look like the most. So this is when the baby no longer looks like this, but begins to look like a real human. So the eyes and ears move to the proper places, and by now all the essential organs and systems have formed, and the roof of the baby's mouth is fully formed so that they can be able to suck, and they begin to form full cheeks. And then if it's a boy, at this point, which would be within the 14th week, the prostate would begin to form, or if it's a girl, her ovaries are moving down into her pelvis. So, I thought I'd go over a small overview of kind of how this works. Like I said, as the months continue, the baby does continue to grow and look more human-like, and the brain cells develop, their nervous system continues to develop so that they will become a healthy baby. So I hope that I gave some of the basic information that I could give you. Like here on my poster, you can see the different sizes that the baby is and how the baby is curled up into the mother's stomach at the different weeks. And then you can also see even at birth time, the baby is pulled out of the stomach. And that's if they do a natural birth. If it's a C-section, the belly then has to be cut open. So this was a fun project, and I hope I gave you guys the information you need, and have a good night.